So,
I need some
up
traction.
next is one of my favorite companies. Who here has heard of Intercom? Right? Awesome company. Always have great content on the leading edge of things. So our next speaker is the COO of Intercom, and previously she was head of small business at Intuit. And I don't know many COOs who actively code, so if you need some help with your AI or machine learning algorithms, she can help you out.
But I do like to play around. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Peacock. I'm the COO of Intercom, and I'm thrilled to be with you guys here today. So what we're going to talk about is growing and scaling tech businesses from 1 million to 500 million in revenue. And I'm going to share with you my stories and practical advice in the form of 5 key themes and areas. So just to get a little bit of a sense of the room, would love to have a little audience participation. So stretch out, get ready. And I'd love a show of hands. Please raise your hand if your company's revenue is less than 1 million. You're a true startup, less than 1 million in revenue. Okay, so we've got actually probably about 10% of the room. Awesome. Now, if your company's revenue is from 1 million to 10 million in revenue, raise your hand. Starting to get some growth. All right, a little bit more, maybe 20% of the room. And now, if you are in the 10 to 100 million in revenue, raise your hand. Excellent. And 100 and above, raise your hand. Okay, good. So we've got a good spread of folks across all sizes of different companies. And these lessons that I'm going to talk about today actually apply at every stage. So that's the good news. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a visualization. So when you start your company or you join your new company, you're really excited. You've got a bunch of ideas. You start trying some things in market, and pretty soon, you start to see something hit. You start to get some revenue, some points on the board. You get your first TechCrunch article, your first Forbes article. You maybe raise some funding. And then you hit a slow quarter, which turns into a slow year. And pretty soon you realize you've actually hit a growth plateau. And this can happen at 1 million, at 10 million, at 100 million. It'll happen everywhere along the way. And this is not what we want, right? We want this, uninterrupted prosperity. We really want wild growth, thank you. We want wild growth that continues without those plateaus. And so that's what I'm going to talk with you about today. My lessons will all be around my own thoughts and experiences in driving growth, scaling businesses, and breaking through those plateaus. That little bit of background about me so you can see kind of where my stories are coming from. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Intercom, and for those of you who don't know Intercom, it's a complete growth platform for sales, marketing, and support teams. We're probably best known for our live chat messaging solution that you'll see in the lower right-hand corner of many websites and web apps. Previously, I was the Senior Vice President of Small Business for Intuit. So I led all of Intuit's products and services for small business, about a $2.5 billion business. So pretty big scale. But along the way there, I worked in many different businesses in different roles. And I started new businesses that we grew from 0 to 50 million in revenue, took over a business that was 20 million when I first got it. I was able to grow it to 100 million, grew another business from 100 million to 500 million. So I've gotten to see a lot of different walks of life. And that's where these stories come from. I'm going to share some good and some bad as well, because I think you learn as much from the failures in here. So one of the most important things is to have a service or a product that customers love. Great product or service. How do you do that? People talk a lot about product market fit. It's a lot easier to say than to do. So I'm going to share with you a couple of pieces of very practical advice in terms of how to build a great product and get that product market fit. And I'll start with a story. This story is a cautionary tale. Okay? It's not has a happy ending in the way end, but it's a cautionary tale. So a number of years ago, when I was leading product management for QuickBooks, which is a small business accounting software product, I wanted to come up with a way of making the product better, right? I wanted the product to be better so that more and more customers would buy it, love it, tell their friends, and we grow the business. So I and my team went out and we spent time with customers. So far, so good, right? We asked customers, tell us what is it that you most love about QuickBooks that makes it great? And then what is it that you really hate about it or annoys you? And then we asked them, if you could have just one thing that you most want from QuickBooks that we don't have today, what's the one thing you would most want us to do? And customers came back and they said, the number one thing, the thing we most want is budgeting. And so we said, great, budgeting. We can build a budgeting product. We're product people. We'll build it. And so we built a rapid prototype. We brought customers in. We had them check out the product. We iterated with them. We polished it. And we got to a point where our customers looked at the product and they said, yeah, that's a good budgeting tool. And we said, fantastic, ship it. And we did, and we celebrated. And you know what happened? Nobody bought it. Nobody started using it. And you know why? I mean, this was like a huge investment. It was a big problem, and we spent all this time working on something that nobody ended up using. And the reason why nobody used it is because budgeting is tomorrow's problem for a small business owner, not today. If you actually sit down with a small business owner, you will never see them actually working on building a budget, maybe the very beginning before they start. Otherwise, a budget is something that's on their to-do list to do tomorrow that never happens today. So we made a classic mistake. We listened to what our customers said. They said they wanted budgeting, so we built budgeting. Where did we go wrong there? So my first piece of advice here around finding product market fit is to watch what it is that people do, not what they say. And so we went back to the drawing board, went out, watched customers actually in their day-to-day life, didn't ask a bunch of questions, just watched what they naturally did. And what we found was a lot of small business owners would sit there with a stack of bills, and oftentimes a physical stack, and they'd go through and they'd sort them. And they'd sort them by which ones they absolutely needed to pay now, and which were the ones that would be okay if they're a little bit late paying and they could kind of move off and pay in the future. Because their actual problem was, I can't pay my bills. And so they sit there with the bills, they look at their account balances, they look at their outstanding invoices to when they'd expect to get paid by customers, and they try to kind of figure out how to make that all work. And so this then leads to my second piece of advice. To fall in love with the problem, your customer's problem, not the solution. The mistake that we made is we fell in love with our budgeting solution, not the customer's problem. The customer's problem was, I can't pay my bills. When we fell in love with that problem, we ended up building a very different product. We built a cash management product, and that cash management product is now loved and used by hundreds of thousands of small businesses today. So fall in love with the problem, not the solution, and watch what customers do, not what they say. And those are my two best pieces of advice around finding product market fit. Okay. So now, you've got a great product. What do you do next? Well, you want to acquire customers, right? So if you think about how do you acquire customers and accelerate growth, think about your own advice, or think about your own favorite shopping experiences. Where are the places that you most love to buy things? Whether that's Amazon, whether that's in person at Apple Store, whatever it is. It probably involves a compelling environment, whether online or in person, a place where you can actually quickly find exactly what it is that you need, get any questions you have answered, figure out all the stuff kind of around that product that you might need, and then easily buy that with confidence. Okay? Now compare that with a lot of business websites, particularly B2B sites, where you go there in order to actually learn more. Oftentimes you need to fill out a form. If you have a question, you're sending an email to try and get an answer. And it's very often, it's completely asynchronous, hours or oftentimes days later that you end up hearing back. That is not the recipe for an ideal customer experience. So my advice to you to accelerate customer acquisition is to engage with your customers and prospects and go real time. What we have found in looking at our Intercom customer base and looking at a study of over 10,000 businesses, tech businesses, and looking at folks who both convert customers in a way that is asynchronous, so they're reaching out to customers and using information on forms, using information through email, versus folks who use a more real-time way of engaging. So a classic forms email-based approach gets you the kind of low single-digit conversion rates that we all know and don't love. but when you use a real-time messaging-first solution to engage your prospects, we see 82% higher conversion rates. That's a huge lift. I mean, that's amazing. And this is easy. This is way easier than the first set of stuff around product market fit. Let me give you an example of what that can look like in real life. So TradeShift is a global supply chain and payments company. They started using Intercom. You can see on the bottom right corner. You can customize it. They've customized it however they want. And they started using that to engage customers. And what they found was as soon as they started using that, it provided a huge lift to their business. They actually saw immediately 51% more leads and an 85% faster sales cycle just from making that one change. This is pretty easy and straightforward to do. More sales faster. Now, if you're thinking, okay, that's cool, maybe I will check that out and do that next year, I would just say this is not something that's in the future. People are doing this today. If you are not doing it today, your competitors either are or are about to tomorrow. And let me show you some of the numbers behind that. Today, we have over 500 million conversations happening every month on the Intercom platform between businesses and their customers or prospects. If you're not communicating real time with your prospects, your competitors are, and they will steal your prospects. So get on a real-time platform, a messaging-first solution where you can engage with your prospects. Now, especially for folks on the B2C side or folks with kind of larger numbers of customers with lower value size, you can't afford to staff up a whole team of people to talk to every single prospect who ever comes to your website, right? So you need a combination of both automation and personal touch. And that's what we're very much a believer in at Intercom. We've got bots to help you automate the things that should be automated, and then people to do the high-touch places where it makes sense. So for example, on your website, you can customize a bot to ask any kind of question that you want. And he set a number of questions. We actually just released new custom bot capabilities yesterday, so you can customize without doing any kind of coding. Any kind of interaction that you want to have with your prospect. Ask them questions. Based on their answers to those questions, qualify them and decide that they're, for your highest value folks, send them to your high value sales teams. For folks who seem more like good self-serve customers, enable them to sign up for a free trial right there within the messenger. Enable them to sign up for a webinar, enable them to watch a product tour, all right within the messenger. So all within that same flow of the conversation. Get the right leads to the right place. Grow your business by engaging with your prospects in a real-time way and add automation so that you can scale. Number 3, so we now have a great product. We're bringing lots of customers in. What happens when you first bring a customer in is that moment of truth, that first interaction. It's the classic, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And particularly for SaaS companies, this is really important. This is important for all companies, but SaaS companies usually have about 3 times the churn rate each month for the first 3 months that they do for the rest of the customer's life. So this is kind of the moment of truth, particularly those first 90 days, and really even the kind of the first day and first month. So invest in that first use. Let me share with you an example of when I was a general manager of payroll within Intuit. It's about an $800 million business. What we found was that customers who used a particular feature, direct deposit, were happier, higher net promoter, stayed with us longer, and bought more from us. Great, right? Except for the fact that most customers did not use that feature. So that's a big problem. And our onboarding experience was pretty rough and pretty hard. So we decided to focus on that, and we did a complete overhaul of our whole onboarding, integrated direct deposit in, and did it in a really breakthrough way. So it's important as you're thinking about onboarding, think about the ideal state experience, not what's possible today. We did some things that were never before done in market, of that instant verification with a bank and more, so that that onboarding was truly seamless and beautiful. What happened? We ended up investing the biggest chunk of our product resources that year into that project. It was a huge project for us. When we launched it, we saw immediately higher trial to paid conversion, higher retention, so much higher that this project ended up literally doubling the growth rate of our customer base. Tremendous. It's a huge, huge impact that you can have if you focus on onboarding and you do it in a breakthrough way. All right, what could possibly go wrong now? You've got a great product, you're bringing in customers at a rapid rate, you're onboarding them well. What could go wrong? Well, I know plenty of things that could go wrong. I'm sure you guys all do too. One of the biggest areas and things that can go wrong is the companies can get too fixated on revenue. When you start to earn a little bit of money, you start to kind of focus on it. As you get bigger and bigger, it's easy to end up getting myopically focused on revenue. And what I would just say is be very careful about doing that. When you focus too much on today's revenue, you ignore the bigger opportunities out there, and ironically, you stunt the whole potential of your business. So if you focus too much on revenue, you will stunt the growth of your business. Focus instead on the benefit that you deliver to your customers. And I mean this in a very specific way. Think very clearly about your top products or services and why customers buy those. What's the real benefit? Are they buying because they can save time? Are they buying to make more money? And if so, make sure that you're super clear on exactly how you're doing that. Prove to yourself and to your customers that you are delivering on that benefit. Measure it for them and for yourselves. Show customers the value you're delivering. Align your teams around that. Get your product teams focused on that benefit metric in building toward a roadmap of delivering more and more value to your customers. Get your marketing teams using that for marketing claims and that is what marketing is talking about the benefit of your product. So the beautiful thing about having a clear benefit is that it unifies your whole company. One of the things we do at Intercom, just as an example, I was talking about the ability to bring web customers to your website and convert more into paying customers. So that's a metric that we look at and are really focused on is the conversion rates of our customers' websites and how can we help improve those more and more and more, and not just in incremental ways, but in breakthrough ways. So focus on that customer benefit and get very specific on this metric, measure that, prove it to yourself, and get better and better over time. Okay, I've given you lots of things to think about. So one question is, where do you spend your time, right? Lots of things you could do. So I think that hindsight is underrated. Hindsight is 20/20, so use it. One of the things that I do is at the end of each year, I reflect back on how I spent my time. And I probably did 1,000 different things. And I think about, of all the things that I did, what were the 3 things that really mattered most? And I think about those, and I figure out how can I spend more time on those things and things like that, and less time on the other 997. So I'd encourage you to take a little bit of time tonight and reflect back over the last year. What were the 3 things that you did that mattered most, and how can you spend more time on things like that? As a quick example, my top 3 this past year. So focus on shifting from a product company to an open platform. Intercom now has 100 different applications integrated in just within weeks and months of launching this. This is important because this is all about driving more value to customers, about delivering customer benefit. Second thing that was really critical, intelligent automation. I talked about why automation really matters to help you grow and scale. Third area, hiring. That could be the subject of a whole other talk. Maybe we'll do that sometime. So those were my top 3. So just to close this up, we talked about product market fit, watching what your customers do, not what they say, falling in love with your customer's problem, not your own solution. We talked about using real-time engagement and automation to drive growth. First use and thinking about that in a breakthrough way from the ideal experience back. We talked about customer benefit and focusing there, and about how to prioritize your time and taking advantage of 20/20 hindsight as insight there. All right, thanks very much for your time today. You can find more of my stories and other stories across leaders at Intercom through our books, which are free, and our blog as well, and you can also follow me on Twitter. Thanks very much, everyone.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.